By this time in Isaiah's life, by the third part of this 21st vision that we're speaking of, Isaiah has been in the ministry for 43 years. He has been prophesying. From his very first prophecy, it has been 43 years since the Lord allowed him to start prophesying. He started during the days of Uzziah, the King Uzziah, then followed the days of King Jotham, then King Ahaz, and now he's in the kingdom that's being ruled, of the southern kingdom being ruled by Hezekiah. It is 712 BC. He started prophesying in 755 BC at the age of 30. So, he's been prophesying for 43 years. He was 30 years old when he started. How old is Isaiah? 73. He is not a young man, and he is not going to live much longer. Now here's what's interesting. When we get through with today's lesson, we will finish chapter 35. Starting in chapter 36, 37, 38, 39, we deal with a history part of Sennacherib coming up to trying to take the southern kingdom, specifically Jerusalem, and Isaiah is inside Jerusalem, and he sees this happening, and he is stopping, and he tells us the history just as it transpires. Then, coming out of that history, it does not say to us the oracle of the Lord, or the oracle or the vision, as the first 21 visions have said. It just simply falls in after he finishes the historical part in chapter 40. He starts by saying, "Comfort ye my people." And the words from chapter 40 through chapter 66 is one vision. There are 22 visions in the book of Isaiah, and that last one covers from chapter 40 through 66. And for most of us, it is the most wonderful part of Isaiah because it has everything about the birth of Christ, the death of Christ, about what's going to happen to different folks. It's got how He will come. I mean, it's got just all these wonderful prophecies that, of course, Jesus is going to come along and fulfill at some point in time. Some of them have been fulfilled. Some of them have not been fulfilled. So, as we get into this, listen, this board up here just wasn't big enough. So I had to go do something else. I have been frustrated ever since we came in this room because we just didn't have enough room. So now we're going to go and we're going to add the side screens. So instead of me drawing some of the things that are on your lessons, I'm just going to go ahead and put them up instead of drawing them up. If it's on this board, you probably do not have it in your lesson yet, but it will probably come in the next lesson as a summary. We've already gone through part 1 of this vision. Part 2, I split up part 2 into part 2A, part 2B, even though we did part 2B last week. Where part 1, the Lord is going to punish the nation that hampers Israel and tries to capture Israel and to carry them back for a ransom and try to carry them back for pay. That nation is the Edomites, the cousins of Israel, that are living down in this area called the Negev. This is the area that is called the Negev. It is owned by, part of it is owned by Egypt. In fact, that little line that comes from Egypt, Egypt owns to right there. That's the Egypt line. It's owned by Egypt, it's owned by Israel, it's owned by parts of Edom, and at different times through all these years, Edom has controlled almost all of it, especially during the time of the exile. Edom controlled almost all of it. We'll go over that in just a few minutes more. Well, the Lord's going to punish the Edomites because of what they're doing down in the Negev. Then in part 2A of last week, we found how the Lord is warning the Egypt and Israel and Assyria not to forget Him and not to ignore Him. That was the first part of last week's lesson. And in the last part of last week's lesson, we started in with what we're going to finish this week, the details about the characters who are going to be in the Lord's 1,000-year kingdom and also characteristics of that 1,000-year kingdom. Well, as we left last week, Armageddon is about to happen. And the Lord is absolutely furious with all the evil people in the world. Now, he's not furious yet. Well, actually, he is furious because he knows what's going to happen. So he's furious with the people in the future who are going to come against him at Armageddon. But he's talking about this indignation will happen at Armageddon. Let's pick up with verse 1, chapter 34. Draw near, O nations, to hear, and listen, O people. Let the earth and all it contains hear, and the world and all that springs from it. For the Lord's indignation is against all the nations, and His wrath against all their enemies. He has utterly destroyed them. He has given them over to slaughter. So their slain will be thrown out, and their corpses will give off their stench, and the mountains will be drenched with their blood. Where's he talking about this? This is where we catch up. If you remember in our design that's on your paper, but also here, after the tribulation time, when the Lord returns, that's the Battle of Armageddon. And when the Battle of Armageddon, it begins at noon on the day that is exactly 7 years after the Lord has snatched the church away. It's exactly 7 years to the day. It begins at noon, and it is over by 6 o'clock. Because at 6 o'clock, the sun is going down in the west, and the smoke is cleared, the clouds are, the sky is clear, and everything is now in the mode of preparation and building. It will take 45 days to get everything ready for the 1,000-year kingdom to begin here on earth with the cleanup. Part of that cleanup occurs as the Lord comes to destroy the Edomites. He invites all the invited guests to come to the supper of the Lamb. The supper of the Lamb. Who are the invited guests? Do you remember? The vultures, the birds, that's right. He invites them to come because they're going to be cleaning up everything that occurs there in the valley of Armageddon, there in the valley of Jezreel. So, as we're looking at this 21st vision, the last part, the last lesson, now it's divided in parts because we had to divide it in weeks. The parts have nothing to do with the vision, it's just how we divide it. We're in week 3. Week 3 of this lesson, as we're going through, the Lord is warning the southern kingdom about what is going to happen in the Negev and the focal point of the evil world as the Lord swoops through. Let me just back you up a little bit. It's not here in this part of Isaiah, but He's going to come down over Mosul. He's going to destroy Mosul or the Nineveh area. He's going to destroy Babylon. He's going to destroy Edom. By the time He gets through with Edom, his white garment that He left heaven with is going to be totally soaked in blood before He says it is done, and the valley of Armageddon begins to happen. That happens at noon. This happens prior to noon. We'll pick that up as we get closer to it. So this evil army is going to have gathered outside of Jerusalem in a valley that goes down to Jerusalem. And we'll show that to you in just a minute. And he says, all the host of heaven will wear away, and the sky will be rolled up like a scroll. All their hosts will also wither away as a leaf withers from the vine, or as one withers from the fig tree. For my sword is satiated in heaven. Behold, I shall descend for judgment upon Edom, that's there in the Negev, and upon the people whom I have devoted to destruction. Now, back in our Revelation study, I drew this picture for you. Here's a picture. We think about a scroll rolling up and, the scroll rolls in. You can pick it up and carry it. That's not what he's talking about here. He's talking about the sky is going to split, and you'll see the sky begin to roll back like this. What do you see through the sky? You see, according to prophecy, you see the original Ark of the Covenant, not the one that Moses made. That was a replica of the ark that Moses saw already in heaven. All the utensils that he was shown there on the top of the mountain, Moses was to come, Mount Sinai, Moses was to come down and recreate them. He drew the designs from what he saw that was already in heaven. And lo and behold, we know that when the sky begins to roll back like a scroll, the sun is dark, the moon is blood, the mountain begins to split. That's the Mount of Olives, of course. And those who are there who are evil will cry out for the mountains to fall upon them as they try to hide, because they think that will be better for them than the Lord's sword to come and to slay them. You see the vision of the ark, the table of showbread, all those are the real things. What they used in Solomon's temple were just replicas of what Moses saw up in heaven. Now, how many of y'all have been to Israel? Okay. And y'all have probably all heard that the Jews say they've got all the utensils ready. They've got everything remade. It's ready to go. And some of them even claim that they've got the temple ready to put back up in 3 days if they can ever get the mount. You've heard that? Okay. They can do all that they want. None of that will be used. Because when the Lord returns, all the real stuff in heaven comes to be in the temple. Not the fake stuff, the replicas we make here on earth, but the real stuff that Moses was able to see will come. Because why? That stuff belongs to the Lord, and wherever the Lord is, He's going to bring it with them. You understand? So they can do all that they want. They're not going to have the chance to build the temple in 3 days. That is just all hoopla, because they don't even believe in the Lord Jesus who's coming. There will still be 2/3 of the Jews on the day of Armageddon who do not believe in the Lord Jesus coming. Only 1/3 will become believers. And chances are it won't be the 1/3 who are stuck in their religiosity of, we've got to have this ladle in gold and this pan in silver and this and that. No, it's not going to be them. It's going to be the ones who simply turn it over to the Lord. And what will happen is the Lord will bring all those things with Him. It will take 45 days, and He'll set that stuff up in the temple when He comes. Well, who are the host? When the sky rolls back, the host cannot go back and retreat there. Why? Because the sky belongs to the prince of the power of the air. Remember that? Well, who is that? Okay. So when the Lord is rolling the scroll back, basically He's saying, okay, let's roll this puppy up so that these guys have no place to go. The demons that followed Satan will have no place to run to, because their sky will be rolled back. They can't run to their sky. They will be destroyed, just as those at Armageddon will be destroyed, and they too will be cast into torment, except for Satan. Satan himself will be put in chains and thrown into a pit in the bottom of the deepest ocean abyss, and a door will be put over him. And he will have to remain there for 1,000 years, of which after the 1,000 years he will be loosed for just a short period of time, so that he can deceive some of the people who have been on earth and never known anything about deception, never known anything about evil. Listen, during the 1,000-year kingdom, I'm going to do this for you ahead of time. I did in my earlier class. I did it at the end. I think it'll be more effective if you hear these characteristics at the beginning, so that as we get through them, you'll go, oh, yeah. Here are the characteristics in this lesson. We're going to find out that in this 1,000-year kingdom, Israel's going to be there. The redeemed are going to be there. The Lord is there and the bride is there. The bride's His church. That's us. We're going to be there. But what are the characteristics of this? Here are just some that are coming out in this lesson, in this vision. Now, when we get into Vision 22, we're going to add a whole bunch of stuff. This is what heaven's going to be like. This is going to be justice and righteousness and quietness and no threats, no sickness, no vicious beast, no Edomites. Remember, they're destroyed. All right? Salvation, smoke from old Edom area will rise as a reminder. In other words, you're going to have this beautiful temple area, and down southeast of that temple district where the Lord is on His throne, smoke will continually rise. And by the way, it'll be inhabited by wild beasts and no humans. There'll be compassion, no wars, no fools, no rogues. It will be a peaceful habitation. Well, most of that's what we think about heaven, isn't it? It's because that's where the Lord is. And wherever the Lord is, it's going to be like heaven to you. So if you happen to check out of here today or tomorrow or next week, you're probably going to heaven to be with the Lord. But you will be mounting a white horse and coming back with a robe of white and precious crowns with jewels in them when it's time for you to return at Armageddon. Well, let's look on. Where does this sky rolling back? Here Isaiah has mentioned it. John in the Revelation gives us some of the details too. Look at Revelation 6:12. And I looked, and behold, he broke the sixth seal, and there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth, just like I have in the picture, made of hair, and the whole moon became like blood, red. Why? Because of all the yuck going up. And the stars of the sky fell to the earth as a fig tree cast its unripened figs when shaken by a great wind. We heard that up in Isaiah. I've told you many times there's nothing new in the New Testament. So if you happen to go to a church that says, oh, that Old Testament's just for old folks, you need to say, listen, you need to start reading your Old Testament and reading your New Testament, because there's nothing new in the New Testament. It's all back there in the Old Testament. And the sky will split apart like a scroll when it is rolled up, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. The stars in the skies that are falling here, these are the demons when it's split apart. And the Lord is going to take them with all the humans who are their bodies are rotting away over in the valley of Armageddon. And their destruction will happen because of His sword. His sword will be satiated, it says, or satisfied satisfied because it is ready to destroy who? The Edomites and also Armageddon. That sword is going to destroy the Edomites. It's going to destroy all those in Armageddon. Well, the sword of the Lord, verse 6, is filled with blood. It is sated with fat, with the blood of the lamb and of goats, with the fat of the kidneys of rams. For the Lord has a sacrifice in Bozrah. Where's Bozrah? 25 miles southeast of the Dead Sea is Bozrah. And a great slaughter in the land of Edom. Why is he going to do this in Bozrah? Why does he mention that? Because when the Edomites were living on that land and when they returned, they did animal sacrifices to false gods in Bozrah. That was their chief area for animal sacrifice and for worship of false gods. One of those things, I tend to like to pull out those, what I call Bible stuff, that stuff we miss when we're reading through. One of those things that, and I've showed y'all many of these things, that you go, wow, that causes me to have to rethink because it's right there. One of the things that I need to tell you is, every time as you go through the entire Bible, look at what happens to the places where false gods, false religions worshipped. When the Lord comes back, the one thing He says, thou shalt have no other gods before me. Every place that has ever had worship of false idols and everything is wiped clean. He hates it. He doesn't want anybody to worship any god, whether it's a god or not, because there are no gods except for God. But if you form something and create it and make it and carve it out with wood and cover it with silver or gold and then set it on your mantle and bow down and worship it, or you go sacrifice animals to it, that just makes God furious. Bozrah will be wiped out. Will be wiped out, even when they go back. Okay, what's going to happen there? When this is all, Edom is wiped out, it says, wild oxen shall also fall with them, and young bulls with strong ones. Thus their land shall be soaked with blood, and their dust become greasy with fat. For the Lord has a day of vengeance, a year of recompense for the cause of Zion. Listen, this is not the last time we're going to hear from Bozrah. We hear about it over in chapter 63 of Isaiah. Let's skip over there and see that. Chapter 63, verse 1 says, who is this one who comes from Edom? See, it's all the same thing, coming from Edom. Who's this one who's coming up towards the southern kingdom from Edom? Who is this coming? With garments of glowing colors from Bozrah. This one who is majestic in his apparel, marching in the greatness of his strength. Who is this one? It is I who speak in righteousness, mighty to save. Why is your apparel red, Isaiah asked, and your garments like the one who treads in the winepress? And here's the Lord's answer. I have trodden the wine trough alone, and from the peoples was no man with me. I also trod them in my anger and trampled them in my wrath, and their life blood is sprinkled on my garments, and I stained all my raiment. When he comes through to destroy Edom, by the time he gets through with them, because there's no humans helping him, although we're coming on our horses behind him, that's not what our purpose is for. We don't actually fight on our horses. We're just the checkers. We run on the rooftops. We rush on the walls. Great and mighty is the army of the Lord. And all we're doing as the army of the Lord is just checking the world to make sure no people who belong to the evil are trying to hide away. It's the Lord who does all the vengeance and all the sacrifice. We don't have to do that when we come back. We're just His checkers, as if He needs a checker to go check out. That's part of our job. He's got to give us some busy work, but it'll be important busy work to us because we'll have a great time. Now, I can just imagine some of y'all that's got really gray hair and lots of wrinkles on a horse. Yeah, I'm waiting for that too. He is going to be bloody before he says, as in the words of Revelation 19, it is done. And that what happens in the valley of Armageddon happens. So what happens going on in chapter 34, verse 9? And its streams, all its little rivers and streams, shall be turned into pitch. That's tar, folks. That's tar. And its loose earth into brimstone. It's going to be hot and hard, all right? And its land shall become burning pitch. When the Lord does something, it's a flaming fire, folks. It shall not be quenched night or day. Its smoke shall go up forever. Told you that a while ago. Smoke from Edom area will go up forever. Why? From generation to generation it shall be desolate. None shall pass through it forever. No more Edomites will ever live down in the area of Edom. They're going to be totally destroyed, and smoke from that area is going to continue to go up. And then the Lord goes on to Armageddon. Verse 11 says, but pelicans and hedgehogs shall possess it. See, people are not going to live in it, but pelicans and hedgehogs are going to live in it. And owls and ravens shall dwell in it. And he shall stretch over it a line of desolation and the plumb line of emptiness. When the Lord draws a line of desolation, it will be desolate past that for humans, not for animals. These animals are going to come by instinct to live there in that area, and they're going to take it over. Edomites, no humans will live in this area after Armageddon. None, not during the 1,000 years. It will be a place for all the wild animals. Guess what happens? Verse 12, no nobles are there. Remember I talked about nobles last week, nobles and princesses. It's nobles, Edom's nobles. There is no one there they may proclaim king. The word whom is not supposed to be in there, folks. That was added by some well-meaning editor. There is no one there in that area that the Edomites could say, you'll be our king. Guess what? Look on. It says, and all its princesses shall be nothing. In other words, they're not going to be there either. There's nobody there. All the Edomites are dead and destroyed. Verse 13. And thorns shall come up in its fortified towers, nettles and thistles in its fortified cities. In other words, it's just going to be overgrown. It shall also be a haunt of jackals and an abode of ostriches. And the desert creatures shall meet with the wolves, and the hairy goat also shall cry to its kind. Yes, the night monster shall settle there, and shall find herself a resting place. The tree snake shall make its nest and lay eggs there, and it will hatch and gather them underneath its protection. Yes, the hawk shall be gathered there, every one with its kind. There's just going to be bunches and bunches of animals living in this area when the Lord returns and Armageddon is over and His kingdom is put in place. Now here's the interesting thing. I want to read this paragraph to you so you just catch it all. Because there's a lot of detail in this next paragraph. hope I'm not insulting your intelligence, but I want you to know this stuff. All of Edom's land will be overgrown with wild vegetation and wild animals, a blessed place for all the animals to make their home. When Isaiah writes these words, Edom is still inhabited by the Edomites. During the days of Nebuchadnezzar, that's 120 years after this, the Edomites expand into the Negev and control it. At that time, they are renamed the Idumeans. They're Edomites, then they become the Idumeans. King Herod the Great is an Idumean. He is a descendant of Esau. He is a descendant of the 12 dukes or sons of Esau. He is not Jewish. Although in 37 BC, Mark Antony, yes, Mark Antony of Mark Antony and Cleopatra. Cleopatra has already had a set of twins for Mark Antony and another child for Mark Antony. They are 7 years until they are going to commit suicide in 30 BC. Mark Antony in 37 BC appoints King Herod to be the king of the Jews in this area of the country. He's an Edomite. He's an Idumean. He is not a Jew at all. And so Mark Antony, later on the Senate after Mark Antony's death comes back and confirms Herod's appointment as king of the Jews. Well, he's not a Jew, so he wants to be proclaimed the king of the Jews. That's what made him so mad when the Magi came and says, "Where is he who is called the king of the Jews?" "Well, that's me. No, the baby that's born." Oh, that made Herod mad. Herod endears himself to them, claims to be a Jew, claims to believe all the Jewish beliefs, and he tries to adhere to them, but he's just doing that in name only. Later, now he's going to die in 4 BC. In 70 AD, 30 whatever the years are after Jesus' death, in 70 AD, Titus rolls in, destroys the temple in Jerusalem, and he puts down a Jewish revolt. A small amount of Idumeans that are left in this area move over to this area that we call the Gaza Strip, and they begin to intermarry with Philistines. Now, the original Edomite land is abandoned at this point after the destruction of the temple, and it continues to be desolate today. When Obadiah writes his prophecy, they are still living down in Edom, and here's what he says. "Then the house of Jacob will be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame, but the house of Esau will be stubble. And they will set them on fire and consume them, so that there will be no survivors in the house of Esau." None at all. What's going to happen? There are still survivors right now. They're going to end up, according to a different prophecy, and moving back down here, repopulating it during the last days, so that they can hamper the Jews who are trying to run to Egypt for help, and that's really going to make the Lord mad. And what's really bad about that is he's telling them ahead of time that's what they're going to do. That's kind of like mama and daddy. Did any of y'all have a mama and daddy could tell you ahead of time how something was going to turn out before it turned out, and you went ahead and did it anyway, and lo and behold, they were right? What's bad about that is we have some parents that are never right about anything. I understand that. But we usually get one that's pretty right about just about everything. That's just the way the cards fall. Every once in a while, there are some out there that I know that have not gotten anything right, but most of the time there's at least one of the parents. It makes no sense to me when there is a book called the Bible that tells us all this stuff and what's going to happen, and it's talking to you, and you go do it anyway. Oh, it's called sin, isn't it? Just downright sin, rebellion. All right. Well, look at here. He says in verse 16, "Seek from the book of the Lord and read." Go back and look at Genesis. Let's just start in Genesis. "Not one of these will be missing." Talking about these animals, these hawks, these birds, these ostriches. These animals are going to come. "Not one of them will be missing. None will lack its mate. For his mouth has commanded, and his spirit has gathered them, and he has cast the lot for them, and his hand has divided it to them by line, and they shall possess it forever. From generation to generation they shall dwell in." These animals are going to dwell forever. How did they know to get there? Go look at the book, and what did it say? When God created all those animals, He just let them right. Those animals just knew to go right by Adam, and Adam would give them a name. When it was time to get animals on the ark, did Noah have to go round them up? No, by instinct. They knew exactly how to come. And by instinct, they knew how to get off of the ark. And by instinct, at that point in time, when they got off the ark, they knew it was time to fear man. By instinct. How do those monarch butterflies know how to fly all those miles to go have babies to come back? How do they know? How do elephants know where to go to the place when it's about time for them to die, to go to the burial ground of the elephants that the elephants have set up, and they go there and they lie down and they die? How do they know? How do they know? We got 7-week chihuahuas, 2 of them. We put them in the kennel for the very first time because we're going to, crate train them, whatever you call it. Okay. They start dancing around a little bit. So we go open the gate, we pick them up, we love them, we hug them, we go take them out and set them on the grass. And do you know what they do? What they're supposed to do. How do they know? By instinct. And then you say, come on, let's go, let's go. And they run right in the house, and by the second day, they're running right on back into the place where their crate is, even though they're not going to get into it. They know we're going to play, and we're going to eat, and we're going to have a good time. And I'm going, how do they know? The one thing that I'm glad they don't know about is there's a whole bunch of other house left. Literally. We can go, okay, it's time to go. Phoom, there they go in the house and around. We can't even get in and get the door shut before they're already in the bathroom going, okay, where's my supper? Or lunch or breakfast? It's time to play. Yeah, yeah. And they play hard, and then they lay down. How do they know how to do that? How do the birds know how to make a nest? How do they know? Have you ever thought about that? How do they know? Because of divine instinct that God put in them when they were created. They know, these animals will know that they are to come here. To come here. Armageddon. I want to show y'all something. I have a little video here from a friend that I want to play for you. How many of y'all been to Israel and been to Megiddo? We keep talking about Megiddo. Okay, Megiddo's up here. Megiddo is not, it's not Mount Megiddo, and I have said that wrong many times. It's Har-Megiddo, H-A-R. H-A-R means the hill of Megiddo, okay? It doesn't mean the mountain, it means the hill of Megiddo. It sits about right here. And this valley runs through here, and then right there's kind of a rise in the mountain, but not much, and Samaria looks over this part of the valley. Then there's Mount Ebal, and the valley comes on around. There's Jerusalem. There's Mount Gilboa, there's Mount Tabor, there's the Sea of Galilee, and that valley actually extends on around to the Mediterranean Sea. You're looking off into that valley right now. Listen to this explanation.
I'm standing right now on the site of Megiddo. This is one of the most important sites in all of ancient Canaan. And there's a lot of history that takes place here, mainly because we're standing on the edge of the Jezreel Valley. As you look out, this is all the Jezreel Valley. One of the main connecting point in Canaan between west, this way toward the Mediterranean Sea, and east, that way toward the Jordan River and the Sea of Galilee and the Transjordan area, today modern Jordan. And Megiddo was important because it stands directly in the middle of this major crossing point. So important, in fact, that the major imperial highway ran through here in antiquity, and this highway carried a lot of important armies from the great pharaohs of the Egyptian New Kingdom to Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and Sennacherib, king of Assyria, and Sargon II, Tiglath-Pileser III. All of these guys and more came through this valley, making this a very bloody place and a very strategic and important place. And so Megiddo sits here in the middle of the Jezreel Valley, and you'll notice in front of us there are a couple of hills. Directly in front of me is Mount Moriah. Just to the right of it, there, I believe, is Mount Gilboa, and just to the left of that little hump right there is Mount Tabor. So you can see these three major hills in the Jezreel Valley that sort of divide things neatly into different roads. This road here takes you east toward the city of Beit Sha'an, and you can cross into Jordan through there. Mount Gilboa is the place where the Philistines hung Saul after they killed him on the city walls. Between Mount Tabor and Hill Moriah, you can head up north through the Tabor Pass toward the Sea of Galilee. And just across, you'll see, I don't know if you can see this modern city here, that's modern Nazareth, the place where Jesus grew up, and it sits inside of a little bowl, kind of nestled away in a safe place overlooking this great valley where all this activity was taking place. And it shows us sort of all the history that he grew up in light of, all these great imperial armies, kings of Israel, kings of the world, and he's on the cusp of all that, growing up as a child. Yet he's nestled away in a little safe bowl, making Nazareth a very conservative place and a very really unimportant place, which is why in the Gospels the question is asked quite seriously, can anything good come out of Nazareth? Because it was such an obscure place. So you can see that from the Jezreel Valley, you can head almost any direction. You can take the Dotan Pass this way, and you can head back down towards Samaria and then eventually Jerusalem further down. So from the Jezreel Valley, you can really cross all the way from the Transjordan or from Jerusalem all the way over to the Mediterranean Sea, making this place a very strategic and important spot.
All right. Now, as you look over there, because of the curvature of the earth, about how far can you see with a human eye? Somebody want to help me? How much? 12 to 15 miles, that is correct. All right, if you look out over that, about as far as you can see is 12 to 15 miles. This valley from here to there, where you can see from Megiddo to Mount Gilboa to Mount Tabor, is not any further than 16 miles at the most. You turn that around here, remember he pointed down here, and it's about 16 miles to down here. In that area, 16 by 16, if you gave everybody 32 square feet, you can put 272 million people in that spot. 272 million people in that spot, plus some more. I'm just rounding it off. That means that area right there, not including, because they will be gathered all the way down through this area, they will be gathered to fight against the Lord. I'm just talking about a little square right here, 16 by 16, miles by 16, 272 million people. They may be even gathered all the way back up to the Mediterranean Sea. There's actually another mountain range up there. We're talking about being in the valley. By the way, Megiddo, where he's standing, probably down on about that road, somewhere along that road, because that road went in on the road that they used to travel. You got that? They didn't scoot over and make bigger roads. Somewhere near that road is where Pharaoh Necho, who was going up to Aram to have a conversation, met and found King Josiah and killed him and then sent him home to Jerusalem, sent the body back to Jerusalem. He's the last really true king under the control the southern kingdom of the world. I don't know why that went off, because I need it back. Come on back. All right. Anyway, control the world. Control the southern kingdom. So what we've got here is we've got a big area that lots of people can be the enemies of the Lord who will be coming back to, who the Lord will destroy when he comes back at Armageddon. All right. Let's pick up here in chapter 35, verse 1. Because this is just continuing. Forget about the chapter breaks. These chapter breaks are really, really poor. We really ought to be just on chapter 21 right now in Isaiah, even though we're on chapter 35, because they've broken it up by little different things, but these are all visions. They really should have been together. Continue with chapter 35, verse 1, talking about this wilderness and the Negev and the Edomite area. It says, the wilderness and the desert will be glad, and the Arabah will rejoice and blossom. Like the crocus, it will blossom profusely and rejoice with rejoicing and shouts of joy. The glory of Lebanon will be given to it, the majesty of Carmel and Sharon. They will see the glory of the Lord, the majesty of our God. There are several species of crocuses that live and or that grow all the way through the Negev, all the way up to the Phoenician area. We would call them today narcissuses. Narcissuses, whatever I would say that. You never get my tongue wrapped around my eye teeth, I can't see it. So when they bloom profusely and they put off this wonderful smell. In the Song of Solomon, he talks about the lily of the valley, the rose of Sharon, which is the lily of the valley, okay? He's talking about this narcissus or crocus plant with all these blooms. He talks about Lebanon. He talks about Carmel. He talks about Sharon. So he talks about the growing up in Lebanon, growing up on Carmel, growing up in the area of Sharon, which is right over here. How beautiful they are. And everyone, when the Lord is on His throne during the 1,000-year kingdom, they will smell that sweet fragrance that will be growing there. What a wonderful thing it is. And the Arabah will run all the way down and will be fresh water. Right now, it's just kind of a yuck. Just the reason why is because this Jordan River used to go all the way down to the Red Sea. But when Sodom and Gomorrah and the two other cities sinned so bad, the Lord sent great destruction and caused that to be the lowest spot on the earth with hellfire and brimstone and turned it into what we know as the Dead Sea. That Dead Sea is going away. It will not be there when the Lord returns. In fact, it will not be there because, and let's go back to our picture here. If you'll see the mount area, you see off to the side, that mount will begin to rise. When the Lord sets His foot on the Mount of Olives will split, and the plateau will begin to rise up. That plateau is 50 miles by 50 miles. When it rises up, the temple will sit on top of that, and coming out of that temple area will be this stream that starts very, very small, like a trickle, and by the time it gets down to several thousand feet down, it is deep, deep, deep. And by the time it gets down here to the Red Sea, it is big and wide, and it turns the Red Sea into fresh water. That's how big it's going to come out from underneath the throne. Well, as we pick up with this, it says, here's the recompense. Encourage the exhausted, he says. He's talking about this in the wilderness. Encourage the exhausted and strengthen the feeble. That's the exhausted and feeble of the southern kingdom. That's the Jews. Say to those with anxious hearts, take courage, fear not. Behold, your God will come with vengeance. The recompense of God will come, but He will save you. When the Lord arrives, He will bring salvation to the Negev by getting rid, and for the rest of the world, by getting rid of all the enemies of Israel. And Israel needs that land because actually, way down here in the bottom of the Negev is where one of the tribes starts to own the land, and it will build all the way up and all the way across. That's where the 12 tribes are going to be living while the Lord is on His throne for 1,000 years. Verse 5 says, here's the great part. Then the eyes of the blind will be opened. I did not write this here. Okay, so we're going to open the eyes of the blind. Guess what? We're also going to open I better put eyes there. We're also going to open the ears of the deaf. The lame will leap like the deer. The tongue of the dumb will shout for joy. For waters will break forth in the wilderness and streams in the Arabah. Here's that stream in the Arabah. And the scorched land will become like a pool, and the thirsty ground springs from water. In the haunt of jackals, its resting place, grass becomes reeds and rushes. He doesn't promise down here in the Edom area. He doesn't promise down here there's going to be any humans. No, no, no. Smoke's going to be rising. But He does promise that the river's going to come down through it. Ezekiel tells us about this. Ezekiel won't even be around for another 120, 140 years. But here Ezekiel tells us about it. Look here. Look here. Ezekiel 47. Then he brought me back to the door of the house, talking about the door of the temple. And behold, water was flowing from under the threshold of the house towards the east. For the house faced east. I was talking about the temple facing east. And it's this temple he's describing is this temple that's going to be on top of this plateau. And the water was flowing down from the right side of the house, from south of the altar. And he brought me out by the way of the north gate and led me around to the outside of the outer gate by the way of the gate that faces east. And behold, water was trickling from the south side. And when the man went out toward the east with a line in his hand, he measured 1,000 cubits. That's 1,750 feet. So I'll say that. He measured 1,750 feet, and he led me out, and the water was reaching my ankles. And he measured another 1,750 feet, and led me out, and the water was reaching my knees. And again, he measured 1,750 feet, and the water was reaching my loins. And again, he measured 1,750 feet, and the river was that I could not ford, for the water had risen, enough water to swim in, a river that could not be forded. And he said to me, Son of man, have you seen this? And then he brought me back to the bank of the river. And now when I had returned, behold, on the bank of the river there were very many trees on the one side and on the other. And he said to me, These waters go out toward the eastern region and go down into the Arabah. Then they will go toward the sea, being made to flow into the sea. That's talking about the Red Sea. And the water of the sea becomes fresh. I don't make this stuff up. I just report it. Verse 9. And it will come about that every living creature with swarms in every place where the river goes will live. And there will be very many fish, for these waters go there and the others become fresh. So everything will live where the river goes. And it will come about that fishermen will stand beside him. From En-Gedi, which is an area right there on the Dead Sea, down to En-Eglam, which is right there, which is not down in the Edom area yet. This is still Moab area, by the way. We're not in the Edom area. We're in Moab. All the way down to there. They're going to stand there and they're going to spread their nets and they're going to fish, and their fish will be according to their kind, like the fish of the great sea, very many. So people will be able to go down as far as the Moab area, but not into the Edom area, even though the river continues to run on down and make the Red Sea fresh. But its swamps and its marshes, everything in Edom with the tar pits and everything, they will not become fresh. They will be left because of the salt. Because we're going to need salt in the 1,000-year kingdom. And by the rivers on its banks, on one side and on the other, will grow all kinds of trees and food, trees for food. Their leaves will not wither, and their fruit will not fail. They will bear every month because their water flows from the sanctuary, and their fruit will be for food, and their leaves for healing. These trees that are all the way down can be eaten. You fish from here to here. I'm a fisherman. I love to fish. I'd love to catch something besides hardhead sometime. It'd be a great deal for me. But when you're fishing on the bottom with stew meat, you're going to get hardheads. I can just tell you that. Now, I do catch other things from time to time, but my wife likes to catch the hardheads and the crabs. She actually pulls the crabs up on the boat, and we let them go. Big old blue crabs. Incredible. Anyway, we like to fish. All this is going to happen. This area in Edom is going to be abandoned, full of animals, but the trees will bear fruit year-round. They will never stop bearing fruit, and you can eat their leaves, and the leaves will bring healing. And a highway will be there, a roadway, and it will be called the highway of holiness. The unclean will not travel on it, but it will be for him who walks that way, and fools will not wander on it. All the way, by the way, this tongue of the Red Sea will actually be turned into dirt, because this will be done away with. We've got that in a different prophecy. This river down the Arabah will actually run further down to the main Red Sea. And from the Nile to the Euphrates, there'll be a highway called the highway of holiness, so that people can walk or ride their Mercedes or their bikes or whatever, or trot along to come to Jerusalem to worship the Lord God at least once every single year with the Lord on His throne. And guess what? There'll be no unclean people there. There'll be no fools there. There'll be no war. There'll be no rogue. There'll be no vicious beast. There'll be no sickness. There'll be a peaceful place for you to travel, and you will not be fearful when you travel. Verse 9, no lion will be on that road, nor will any vicious beast go up on it. These will not be found there, but the redeemed will walk there, those who belong to the Lord. And the ransom of the Lord will return and come with joyful shouting to Zion, with everlasting joy upon their heads. They will find gladness and joy, and sorrow and sighing will flee away. There'll be no sorrow or sighing in this 1,000-year kingdom. That's almost like being in heaven. No sorrow and sighing. This is what's going to happen to the people, the Edomites, who control the Negev almost most of the time through history. They're going to be done away with. That whole prophecy, the 21st prophecy, is to tell us what's going to happen to the Edomites and then what's going to happen to that land and how it's going to be controlled. As we look at the summary here of the fulfillment of prophecy 21, chapter 30, verse 7 through 33 will not be fulfilled until the Lord breaks through the eastern skies and comes to destroy Edom. Chapter 31 is fiction to be fulfilled in Isaiah's day within the year of this prophecy. Within the year. It's 712. Within the year, this prophecy will be fulfilled. This part of this prophecy will be fulfilled. And then chapter 32 through 35 will not be fulfilled until the Lord returns at Armageddon and what happens after Armageddon. That's the 21st vision. Now we're going to pick up with Hezekiah making some really blunders in how he rules the people, and Isaiah's interaction with him, and the king of Assyria, Sennacherib, and his general, Rabshakeh, will show up outside of the city of Jerusalem and tell them, you need to open the doors and you need to let us come in and you need to let us take control of your city. But that's not part of the Lord's plan. So we'll see that history as it unfolds in Isaiah's day, 712 BC. We'll start next week. Lord Jesus, we thank you for this time to study your word. And since all of this, all your other prophecies have been fulfilled, why would this not be fulfilled? Why does the Bible have so many references to the same information? It will happen, and we can be assured it will happen. And we thank you that you are a God who never changes, who never sleeps, who never slumbers, who has told us the future so that we would know it if we would just study it. Thank you, Lord. In your name, amen.